I mean, you have mentioned a couple of cars, but without giving any specific financial advice, many people out there that are aspiring to own these cars, and yes, you've made the decision, I'm going to start my practice. Obviously, that carries greater financial potential compared to, working for someone else. How do you structure your purchases?
Okay, look, I'll bring my wife into this because she comes from a financial background. So I had very poor, I was ignorant in terms of how to manage money. So I started the practice, it went well-ish for a couple of years. After 2 years, I got married after having the practice, and then things didn't go as well as I liked. So we grew and then we stagnated. If anything, we started to go the other way. So I've had the circumstance where a business hasn't been doing well. She came from a business development background, and very kindly, she came on board. She took some time off from her job. She was a star employee in the corporate world, star for them, and she took some leave to help me out, and it was meant to be 3 months, and then she exhausted her leave for another 3 months, and then very selflessly made the decision to forego her professional ambitions to allow me to pursue mine, which from a financial perspective might have been a retrograde step, because the corporate world is factors of magnitude larger than mine in terms of financial remuneration. But as I've sort of alluded to throughout this evening, is that money has not been my driving factor. It's come about as a result of my focus and my dedication on achieving what I wanted to achieve, and my dedication to my profession to be the best that I can at it. And I think that holds true of any line. If you're at the top at any line, you're going to have nice toys. Okay. So, in terms of answering your question specifically, how do we structure it? Look, the logical side of my brain tells you this. It's a depreciating asset, and the argument that, if you buy this one's going to be limited edition, or it's going to be in demand, it's going to go up.
Is it just marketing?
Yeah, okay. I don't know how you pick it. Some may not. So consider it purely a luxury. I'm personally at this stage I know a lot of people finance vehicles. Now, I don't have a problem with anyone financing them, provided you have investments which greatly exceed what you've financed, either experiencing capital growth or generating income that vastly exceed what you're paying on this depreciating asset. You cannot, in all honesty, even though numerically you may think you can afford it, if you're down to the point where you're sort of budgeting something where, it's X dollars per month and I can just take that out of my pay and it'll be fine, and I'm going to do it over 5 years with a horrible balloon at the end, you need to take a step back. I'm all for chasing your dreams and getting things done in an expedient and urgent manner. And despite what, people might have seen me taking enormous risk, I've never been foolhardy. And I think at an inopportune time, spending vast amounts of money on a motor vehicle is foolhardy. You need to do it at a time in your life when it's appropriate. And that basically means that it's not a financial drain on you. So if you've budgeted and you've said, okay, I want to buy this car and it's going to take that much out of my pay to pay for it, and you've got nothing else generating income for you, whatever those investments may be, and I'm no one to give investment advice, okay? I'm no one to give investment advice. But if you don't have some form of long-term financial plan, but you're buying cars, I think that's a mistake. And this is coming from a car guy. I absolutely love cars. Now, look, I'm not going to go out and buy a collection of historical McLaren F1s and Ferrari Daytonas and the whole lot, because the circumstance of my life at the moment is I would put that money to better use. Okay. Hopefully one day I'll be there, but it would only be in a circumstance where that was a minority of my wealth and a minority of my income. It's important because I know people close to me. I've even had family members where they've purchased things that ultimately are worth a lot less in a week, in a year, and 2 years after you've bought it, and spent a lot of money on it. So they are a depreciating asset. I can't stress that enough. It's basically the same as, yes, you have the vehicle, you have the experience and all of that, but from a purely financial point of view, you are letting the money go. So whilst I'm an advocate for enjoying your life, I'm not a stickler, just work, work, work. You need to enjoy your life. You guys can tell I have a good time. And yes, that takes cost. I have no issue with people doing that. But you need to be able to do it once you've secured your wealth to a certain extent. It does concern me when I see people buying things and maybe carrying the payments, but then they don't have a long-term plan to build wealth. At least all the people I know who, and look, a lot of the guys I know have fleets of supercars, multiple supercars, not just one. None of them are buying them on credit, so to speak. Okay.
So obviously you mentioned the financing on the BMW. So from there onwards,
that was a mistake. That was the BMW. Financing of the BMW was a mistake. So I've made the mistake.
Yeah.
And it was an impulsive buy and an emotional buy to celebrate something. So you do have to balance it because it might be a poor financial decision, but boy, it's a good emotional
so
one,
much
right?
fun.
Okay, so
it puts a smile on your face.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just to kind of simplify it to someone who may have never heard of this concept before. Correct me if this is not what you mean, but it sounds like a concept I've heard a little bit through my own research, where it's not using your own direct income to pay for the what's called the depreciating asset. It's your income from the.
Let me ask you this question.
Passive income.
Let me ask you this question: if you've got a car and you lose your job, is it going to cause a problem?
If you've got a car
and you lose your job, is it going to cause a problem?
That's a good way to put it.
Right. That is the litmus test. If your primary source of income dries up, for whatever reason, you lose your job or something happens unforeseen, is it going to cause a problem? If it causes a problem, I think that should just be a need to step back and think, is this the right time? If it's not, go ahead. Look, I'm all for buying horrendously expensive, fast cars that lose money because they're the ones which are the most fun to drive. I'm not going to talk anyone out of it ever, but I would ask them to exercise caution on the basis of what I've just said. Yeah. And if they can answer those questions appropriately in their own mind, go buy your Lambo, go buy your Ferrari, whatever it is.
The new one.
Okay.
Speaking of investment, speaking of investments, because obviously you found your calling, right? Because it's something that you're super passionate, you found it at a very early age because of that need for fast decision making and speed, right? Very, very core principles that many people can carry along and apply in whatever they're doing. Now, did you find that as soon as you established that, you needed to diversify, have that, multiple streams of income, as people say?
I think it's important to, clearly that's the aim, okay? You may have a primary source of income, but if you can diversify, you're hedging your bets on ensuring that you're going to be having a high standard of living throughout your lifespan. I think, though, we need to answer the question sort of a little bit more simplistically in the sense that you also need to tailor it to where you are in your life. I will the best expenditure of money is putting resources back into what is your professional passion. Okay? I'm not saying hobby. Because by definition, a profession should bring you remuneration. Right?
Yes.
Well, that's been the follow-up question every time we talk about FMIs with those guys on the private track day event we were on. The next follow-up question was, how are you guys making money from it? So yeah, spot on.
So you need to have that is probably particularly, we might have people listening from all stages of their life, but I'll direct this to people who are probably where I was back in 02, 07, or in 07 and then in 09 when I was starting my own practice. You will never, ever go wrong if it's clear in your mind and it's a professional pursuit of yours which part of it is to generate income, and you're putting all your resources into that. It's much better than putting resources into other things. Then once that starts to generate income, you can start to look at diversifying. But I wouldn't, if at early days, don't spread don't spread things too thin. You have to have that focus. As that endeavor grows and flourishes, then things can go. So look, if you look at my practice, initially everything I earned got put back into it, because look, when you're starting out, it's tough. So I mean, people might say, look, well, it's easy for him to say this now. Let me tell you, I've been at both ends of the spectrum. So I do speak from experience. It's not that it's been a smooth path, or I just clicked my fingers and I was here, blinked my eyes and I was here. So my opinion does carry some weight. It's not an opinion of somebody who's just had it easy. To give you an example, you guys have a passion which you want to grow, okay? It's become a profession of yours. So when I started my practice, everybody was telling me I was going about it the wrong way. Everyone. We spoke about start small, grow big. Now, can you imagine what it felt like when everybody's told me I'm doing the wrong thing, and people whose opinion up to that point in time I'd taken on board, and people who really wanted me to do well, their only interest was my success. And now I'm a week away from paying staff and I don't have enough money to pay them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right? So the key thing in those moments is, so at that point in time, if you had bought things you shouldn't have bought, it's going to hurt, okay? Yes. So don't do that prematurely. But the key thing also is, look at your motivations for materialistic reward. Why do you really want it? Why do you really want it? And everyone can answer that question for themselves. It doesn't really bother me what the answer is, but why do you really want it? My answer is, it's because it was something that from childhood spoke to me. It was not for ego or for vanity. Yeah. So that pursuit to me was quite a pure pursuit. It wasn't that and you guys know how I use this. You've been, right? So I'm not someone who will particularly enjoy going and parking it outside of a cafe and get all the attention. I'd much rather just keep it here, go to the track, do my laps, have my fun there, and then come back. So my pursuit of it was, I like the engineering, I like the design, I like the thrill of the speed, and I wanted to become proficient at driving cars quickly. So when, if anyone's in those moments where you're starting out and you think things are sort of getting overwhelming, there's a couple of things you really need to my advice would be this. If you've thought through the steps in your mind, and just everyone's intelligent enough to do this, and the dots join, it doesn't really matter what anyone else says, if it's clear in your mind. But you need to be able to understand when you have that clarity. It really has to be crystal clear, and you have to back that up by enormous self-belief. And I distinguish self-belief from self-confidence. And I'll tell you why. If you've been on track and you've had a moment through a corner, you might have a little bit of trepidation going through it a second time and a third time, because your confidence has taken a hit. And I've had those moments. I've had a spin, when I think, oh, geez, went through a bit through there, better be careful, better be cautious, so the confidence is down. But I've always had the self-belief, and not just driving cars quickly, but in all aspects of my life, that ultimately I will prevail. And me being me is I'll prevail rather quickly. So that ability to find that self-belief is key. I think a lot of people force themselves to feel emotions that are not natural. And when I see people starting out, the issue I have when they're starting out is there's so much bravado So they almost interpret it as a sign of weakness if they're nervous or they're anxious. And I mean, when I talk to, for example, in a professional setting, when I talk to junior doctors or I talk to junior staff and they might be doing things for the first time and some of them will get, and this is in all fields, some of them will get into a mindset that, I'm going to psych myself up in the common parlance. That's a waste of energy. When you're doing something that is risky or the stakes are high, it is absolutely normal for you to feel anxious. And that is evolution priming us so that you are sharp. So whenever I'm about to do something that's a little bit risky, if I don't have that little surge of adrenaline, I don't know, you might have experienced it just before the green lights go on and you go, right? Yeah. And you don't have that little bit of adrenaline, it's not nervousness because that can put you the other, that can start to affect performance. But if you don't have that little bit of anxiety, that little bit of adrenaline, I get worried that I'm not focused in the moment because that's my body chemically reacting to prime me. Now, that can be a very unpleasant sensation. And many people quit at that point because they don't like what it feels like. So my advice is go with the flow. Just let the emotion wash over you and focus on the task at hand. Don't focus on trying to make yourself feel a certain way because you think that you should be feeling super confident and, almost a very American bravado way of presenting yourselves. Okay, and I don't know in our culture whether that comes naturally to us or not. Okay. The next stage of development of that is you enjoy it. So you expect it and you enjoy it. And the third stage, when you know you've really made it, is when you crave it. When you reach a level of proficiency and you say, I haven't had that anxiety, I haven't had that urgency, I haven't had that adrenaline rush, and when you crave it. And when you're at that point, you've reached a level of proficiency and you can really make big strides. So if anyone's sort of at the beginning and they're wondering how to do things, my advice is put your resources into what is going to pay the biggest dividends in the future, and that is you and what you do. Don't go crazy and try and pick the next biggest and greatest scheme. It needs to make very clear sense in your head. And if you can't join the dots and logically connect each of them and have a coherent argument for what you are doing, then that's your brain and your intelligence telling you you're probably on the wrong track and it may not work out so well. Okay? So that clarity of purpose and that clarity of path is key. If you've got that, then that's a better investment in terms of your mental power, your intelligence, and whatever money you have to put into that endeavor. And I would never criticize anyone for, if they can answer those questions, going for it. And if you're at that point in time in your life, unfortunately, luxuries probably aren't on the menu at that point.
Okay. No, absolutely.
Such a strong point to end on. That is such a
speaking on...
Because if you do it, if you put the resources in now, it will pay exponentially in the future. And I promise you, I absolutely promise you, there may be people now who can afford, let's say, an A45S AMG. I don't know, they're about 100 grand now, aren't they? Pretty expensive for a pocket rocket, but, decent car. There may be someone out there who, let's say, you know what, I can make the payments. I can go to the dealer and get horrendous finance, which will cap my kilometers, because they want to maintain the resale. So I'll buy the vehicle with my money, or every month I'll pay them. I will then restrict how much I can drive it. So you're not even getting the emotional upside from having the ability to drive it whenever you want to. And then I'll sell it back to them in pristine condition and either have to pay them out or pick up another vehicle, and then they get a guaranteed resale when they put it back on because the car's had minimal mileage on it, right? If you're in that circumstance and a better use of your mental faculties, financial tools at your disposal is investing on your professional path, because jumping onto an A45S, an M3 or whatever it is prematurely will cost you a McLaren down the track. 100%. Because you've now changed the path. Right? And you were already going here and there was a high degree of success associated with that. Now you've flexed it. Okay? And now you've gone off on a tangent. So find what's your calling, dedicate yourself to it, and in the early days, invest everything into it. And that brings you a degree of success and you're getting a degree of proficiency. and you're at the stage where you're enjoying the anxiety and maybe potentially craving it, that's when you start to look at what else you can do. There'll be other people who say, no, diversify from the beginning, but my experience was that I only really did that when it made sense. And I made sure I did that before I got the fancy toys. Exactly. Okay, but in the beginning, everything I had, I put into what I was doing.
And on that note, like, I mean, that's a very unique perspective in the sense that, yeah, invest back into your professional line, before, sort of like, would you say like it's treating yourself? Because, I mean, one question that we're gonna get possibly when the viewers watch this, because a common pairing is, if you like the cars, you like the watches, right? And I'm sure people are gonna see you sporting the Audemars Piguet, the gold with the white face, right? So you said reinvest back into your professional line, and then it comes time to treating yourself, right? And there must be a meaning behind it. So, I mean, I'm into horology, trying to get Will to get into it just as much as he's getting into cars.
As I've mentioned before, that's a bigger money pit than cars. I'm telling you now, watches, right?
Why did you get that?
Look,
what does it mean
I completely agree with the sentiment that you need to enjoy your life. So I think if someone listened to me today and thought that my sole focus is professional success without enjoyment, they've missed the mark here. Mm-hmm. The point I'm making here is whatever it is that you do, don't segregate it. Don't try this work-life balance stuff. You need to dedicate. And there is no greater enjoyment or celebration than seeing the completion of something you set in motion. Mm. And if you participate in a modern economy, by the very nature of what you do, you will be remunerated for it. Exactly. Right? So, do I like nice things? Clearly I like nice things. Do I enjoy buying nice things myself? Yes. Do I enjoy other people buying nice things? Yes, absolutely. Time and a place for it. But in terms of watches for me, when have I bought them? Well, I'm not into them perhaps as much as you are. I have the AP and a Hublot, right? So I have two. Both of them were bought at times that were meaningful for me. So this was bought in 2017, which is the year of my daughter's birth. So she's March born and I'm April born. So I liked it, and she was born and I was on a high, and it means allowed to, so I did that. Winding back previously, I'll tell you an example. When I was newly married and the practice was okay, it was growing, but I wasn't certainly the dominant force in terms of the marketplace in orthodontics that we are now. We weren't. I went to a conference and I took my wife, and this conference was in Singapore. So my wife was with me, and if you're in that Marina Bay Sands, they hosted it there, and I think we were staying there at the same time. There's a shopping center attached to that hotel. I believe it's I'm pretty sure I'm correct. And there's a watch shop in that, and they sold Hublots. And I probably walked in and out of that shop 20 times, and it wasn't the right time for me to buy it. I wanted to very badly. I felt bad walking in and out of it because my wife saw me do that, and she felt bad that I wasn't buying it. And I said, let's not. She's financially very, very savvy. So a lot of my success is due to the decisions that she's made. We're in our marriage at an extent where we know our relative strengths and weaknesses. So, and we can engage in debate in a non-acrimonious manner. So we can do it very lovingly and in a very friendly manner. But she has areas of her intelligence vastly exceed mine. So there's certain things where I'll literally go to her for guidance. One of them is financial decisions. She really understands this stuff well. Having said that, she obviously, as her husband, there's a high degree of care there, and there's a lot of emotional connection. So she was saying, I feel so bad you're going to end up buying it, but it wasn't the right time. Several years later, we're now in 2014, end of the year. My wife's a lover of all things Italian. She doesn't choose the cars, clearly. Okay. So we went to Italy, which is one of the, she loves it. We had a fantastic holiday. So this is before we had our child. And we're in Milan. I'll tell you a funny story about Italy and Milan, but I'll answer this question first. And there's a big watch shop there. And I walk in and I told her we're not going to buy, we're just going to look. We're just going to look. The smartest salesman in the world, because he's heard me say this and he's looked at me and he had that Italian charm and suave and fashion, and I think he's probably thought in his mind, I'm going to sell this guy a watch before he walks out. So I told him what I wanted and I said, look, I'm looking at something which is modern. I'd like it probably in rose gold with like a black strap, sort of that hybrid rather than being full metal. And he pulled out a few which I didn't really like, and I said, oh, you know what, not so keen. Master salesman. He almost lets me get to the point where I'm saying, look, none of these really spoke to me. He said, I'll give you one more. Pulls out this one from underneath, which is a Hublot, which I hadn't seen before, okay? And I just looked at it. I think my eyes popped up that big. And then my wife was with me, and I ended up buying it in that time. So that purchase was meaningful for me because I was on a holiday with my wife, one of a fantastic holiday that we still remember. So one which we'd planned for a while, and it was on the back of she had now been working full time in my practice, quit her job, come on board for probably about 3 years at that stage. So the practice now is successful. So it's nothing like what it was before she came on board. So that was sort of a celebration of a few things. But yeah, I certainly don't have a Floyd Mayweather collection. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
okay.
For what it is, AP and Hublot, I'd say
So
that's good. But your main focus is the cars.
I like cars. So if you ask me to choose, what would I have to give up? The watches or the cars? Look, I don't need to know the time. Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Okay. So
I mean, it's been fantastic. On that note, I mean, that's been very insightful. We went straight from the beginning, understood why you got started, why you even have the passion for cars. We took it from your perspective, which is essentially what you've done from your eyes, to ours. And on that note, my name is Anthony.
My name is William. This is Dr Shimanto.
And this is From Eyes.
From my eyes to yours.
Cheers.
thanks for having me.